and grew the network and the mark availability across the UK. And then we've the last few years been available internationally as well. So it's an international accreditation. The criteria does apply overseas as well. The evidence requirements obviously vary, but it is an international accreditation mark. We've currently got presence in 10 different countries, and we've also got partners in the US, in the Middle East, and also in Ireland as well. So that's with agencies who operate and help us deliver the accreditations in those countries. So what is a social enterprise? So there's the UK definition that I've got written here, that's the government definition, which is businesses with primarily social objectives whose surpluses are principally reinvested for that purpose in the business or the community, rather than being driven by maximising profit for shareholder or its owners. So it's very much about what happens to those profits that an organisation makes. So the social enterprise is a business model, it's not a legal structure. Many social enterprises are formed in various different legal structures. For instance, ourselves, we're a CIC, which is a community interest company, or some people call it KIC. You can be a limited by guarantee, limited by shares, charity with a trading arm. It can be in various different forms, but what's really important is how the business operates and stays true to sort of defining principles as a social enterprise. So those that are trading for people and planet before shareholder gain. You often hear social enterprises say that they're not for profit, which is absolutely fine if that works for them, but it can be misleading, because a number of social enterprises do make a profit, but what's key is what they do with the profit that counts. So we like to say that profit's not a dirty word, but obviously it's what you do with it, and the more profit you make, the more good supposedly you can make. And then obviously it's very important for sustainability as well. What do we do in the social enterprise sector ourselves? As I said, we operate an accreditation scheme, so that's very much where our expertise lies in social enterprise. So we first developed the Social Enterprise Mark, but over the 11 years have delivered and introduced different levels of standards. So I've got on the screen here some of those that we currently offer. So we've got the Aspiring Social Enterprise Accreditation, which is sort of an entry-level accreditation for organisations that are perhaps new start businesses, those that are wanting to operate as a social enterprise but maybe don't quite meet the criteria of the main social enterprise mark. I'll go into the criteria for each of those in a minute, which I think is the next slide actually. So yeah, then we've got the main social enterprise mark. So that's for those that are have been qualified and shown that they are an approved social enterprise. And then on the bottom right hand of the screen there, you've got our gold mark. So that's the one that looks at excellence. Those that have probably been around for a lot longer and have got some great track record of creating excellent social and environmental impact, and really running their businesses really well, so able to meet our top level criteria. We've also got a couple of bespoke accreditations. You'll see there the Social Enterprise Disability Employment Mark. So that's for supported businesses, so those that support people with disabilities, but still also operating as social enterprises. And we've also got one that's for local authorities, our Local Authority Disability Employment Mark. Those are both sort of specific for that sector that we've developed with some guidance with the government as well. So I think it's helpful just to talk a bit about the criteria that sits behind these standards. So we've got the aspiring, the entry level, and the first four, the criteria that we look at for these is that an organisation is independent. So for that one, we look, that the company is registered on Companies House and has no sort of connections to another company that might, for instance, have more decision-making powers. So they're completely independent. They also must have clear social or environmental objectives. And the evidence for this is that we look for them to be in place in their company articles. So if, for instance, you were a registered community interest company, then by default that legal structure requires, sort of the business to have clear social objectives. So those would automatically meet that criteria. The other legal structures are, we would look that that's in place. And if it's not, we do provide guidance on helping them to make their objectives clearer there. And we also ask that at least 51% of any profits made are dedicated to social purposes. And that quite often can be reinvested back into your own business. It doesn't have to be reinvested up to other social causes. And then finally, again, in the company articles, we look at the what's known as the dissolution clause, or sometimes known as the asset lock clause, that if the company was to dissolve, that any sort of remaining assets would be distributed to social aims as well. So that's the 4 criteria for the aspiring. And then building upon that to demonstrate that you operate as a social enterprise, we look at the income and where that comes from. As you see here, at least 50% of income we expect then to come from trading sources. And, obviously a lot of new start businesses very much need to rely on sort of grass seed funding, grants, maybe even donations. So those would usually sit in the aspiring level, and then we support them and watch them grow to become more sustainable and reliant on actual traded income, so selling their services or products. And we also at that point would expect them to be able to demonstrate that their social objectives are being achieved. So we collect that evidence quite simply through social impact questions that we gather. So we send that out to you in a document, or you can complete it online, and sort of complete some examples of how you are achieving your social objectives. And then there's 5 additional criteria, again, that's built upon the mark criteria for our gold mark. It's a much more robust assessment process, and much more rigorous. Obviously, it's a high level. So we look much more in depth at your governance, your stakeholder engagement, your practice as a business, the transparency of your finances, and obviously social impact reporting. We expect to see more, and that's done more regularly than if you were at the Social Enterprise Mark standard level. All of our accreditations are renewed annually. So you do a full assessment when you first apply, and then we check to see you remain eligible annually, and then the license is renewed. The process is not so much of if you don't qualify, you're sort of turned away. We're very supportive. We work with you to help you meet the criteria. It's very much of a guided process for any organisations that want to apply, and very tailored sort of service that we offer as well, because we're a small social enterprise ourselves, but we're very friendly and like I say, like to support each of our applicants and their individual needs. So that's an overview of the criteria, all of which is available on our website. I'm sure my colleague Sophie, who's joined, can link to the website in the chat. And on the website you can access our full qualification framework for each accreditation. So there's much more detail on, you know, any questions you might have on each criterion, what evidence requirements are needed for each. It's important to say that our assessment process is overseen by an independent certification panel, or accreditation panel, should I say. They are external from our company. They're made up of volunteers, legal, accountants, social enterprise experts, and they meet regularly throughout the year to ensure that, you know, we're upholding our standards as an accreditation body, and they do spot checks on our applications as well. So we believe that, you know, there is a really important need for accreditation. I think, you know, there is a lot of confusion over there on how to identify social enterprises, and the mark obviously provides a really clear way to identify those for, you know, all your stakeholders, customers, business partners, government, whoever it might be, commissioners. The mark obviously allows you to show that you've been externally verified as a social enterprise, and that, you know, people and planet is at the heart of what you do. So there's that trust there that sits behind it. And as it says there, it protects your social enterprise integrity because of the process that you go through to gain that accreditation. So we recently completed a stakeholder survey, which closed, I think, last month. And so I've just got some of the findings that came out of that, which we're really pleased with. So, for instance, that 93% agreed that, you know, accreditation was important for reflecting on their practices and for communicating to stakeholders. And 80% agreed that it was important to help them define themselves as a genuine social enterprise. We also, that it helps them improve their standard as operating as a social enterprise, and how important it is for them to verify their social enterprise credentials as well. The stakeholder survey summary report is also available on our website if anyone wants to have a little look through. So the key benefits, I've done an overview. The benefits vary depending on obviously what level you achieve, but generally, you know, it helps you prove your credibility as a social enterprise. It differentiates you from competitors, you know, especially if you are competing in a market of organisations that are for profit gain for the shareholders, obviously not for social gain. And then obviously we help you to not just prove that you're creating a social impact, that we can help you articulate it. And that's because it's more than just a mark. So we obviously we assess your organisation's social impact, and from that we do provide feedback from the, you know, from the assessment that we carry out. So we can give recommendations and help support you improve that, and come up with some, you know, ideas on how you can do that. And also we create what we call a social impact declaration for all our mark holders, and that's like a nice summary sort of marketing document that you can use to help communicate your social impact. And I think it's really beneficial to a lot of mark holders, because often you hear social enterprises that are doing amazing things, but they struggle to really articulate those great things that they're doing and that impact they're creating. And then obviously naturally with accreditation, it provides validation and assurance of your credentials. It's a business development sort of program in a way, because of the tailored support that we give you and the way you can work your way to use our criteria to achieve higher standards. And obviously feedback's available to the assessment that we provide. And then obviously using the actual mark, the logo, to get noticed as a social enterprise and one that's been verified. Another key benefit is obviously joining our network or our community of mark holders. So you'll be listed on our directory where we profile your organisation and the social impact that you've created, but also we've got really good reach across our social media channels. We promote our mark holders across there, but also in our monthly newsletter or in our weekly bulletin that goes out as well. So I've just put a couple of examples of who some of our mark holders are. So we've got the lovely Impact Hub from King's Cross that are with us today, who kindly wanted to run a joint webinar with us. You'll be hearing from them after me to find out some more. The Big Issue, obviously really well-known social enterprise. They've held the mark pretty much since we started out. Investors in People, another well-known accreditation company. The Wesley, who are a social enterprise hotel based in London. If you don't know them, definitely check them out. Really friendly bunch that work there, and they've got a great venue for events as well. It's not just a hotel. And Charity Bank, it's also a well-known social enterprise. But there are many more. As I said, social enterprises can come from all different backgrounds, education, retail, healthcare, all sorts. They literally can do anything. And then a bit about the process of applying. So the best way to apply if you are interested is to register your interest. There's a form available on our website, or I'm sure Sophie will put a link in the chat. You just input your basic contact details, and then we follow up to find out a bit more, arrange a telephone conversation, or it can just be email contact to find out those basic details. And of course we look at, if your company's registered on Companies House or other registering bodies, and we, for the social enterprise mark standard, we look at company accounts. If you're going for that level, we also can send you the social impact questions to complete. For the aspiring level, if you're a new start organisation and interested, by all means submit your details and we can have a chat. But the application process really is quite straightforward. It's a 2-page application form, and you just submit that, and then if there's more information we need, we'll get in touch and ask. There's no real sort of set process because it's very much tailored on each organisation. So it's very personal process, very tailored, as I said. So we'll wait to find out a bit more about your organisation and go from there, really. But once we've done that sort of information gathering, we do expect payment upfront before any actual assessment work starts. And the licence fee for the aspiring accreditation is £150 plus VAT, and that's a flat fee for any organisation applying. Unless if you're an international organisation, there is an international fee on top of that. And the social enterprise mark licence fee starts at £250 plus VAT, and that obviously that raises, we've got different tiered fees based on the size of the company and their level of turnover. They're all available on the website if you want to check what level you might be. And once the fees received by us, we can begin the assessment process. So gathering your application together, I ensure that you've got everything there before it's passed off to our assessment team, who then work through it, and if all looks okay against our criteria, then you're approved and welcome to our community. Sent the marketing toolkit, the logos, the feedback, and obviously get a place on our directory. If for some reason you've fallen short somewhere, like I say, it's not a no, you've not met the criteria, we can have a look into that and support you to continue to reach the accreditation standard. I think that's pretty much the process. So that's for the aspiring and the social enterprise mark. The gold mark is, like I said, it's a much more in-depth process, so it does take longer. There's obviously more criteria for needing to be met, so more evidence, but again we work with you throughout that whole process, but the general sort of application process is the same. It just usually takes longer. Typically, if an organisation is quite confident that they meet our criteria and we feel that's the case too, we can turn around from application to approval, in a couple of days, even typically a couple of weeks. If some support needs with that application, some support is needed to make some changes, for instance, to your clauses, naturally it takes a bit longer. And if the application does need to be reviewed by an accreditation panel, then we do allow up to 6 weeks for them to come back to us, because they are volunteers. But so the length of time that it takes really does vary. But it can be quite quick and painless. It is a simple process, but it is obviously naturally robust. And that's the overview from me. I just the final slide here, I wanted to share our coffee morning that we're running, which is a free event on the 14th of July, 10 to 11. There's a link there, and this is a really informal opportunity for people to come along and ask questions and chat, and depending on numbers we might have sort of subgroups where people can ask comfortably any questions they might have about the process. Our website again is there, my email address, if you want to contact me directly about finding out more, by all means drop me an email, and we've got our Twitter as well. That's all from me, and I think I'm handing over, before we do questions, I believe I'm handing over back to the impact team to tell you a bit about their experience of applying.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Rachel. We wanted to share what it's actually like from the point of view of an organisation that's been accredited. So first of all, why, and then what. So I'm going to be talking mostly about the why, and then Sam, my colleague, is going to take over, and because he did most of the work on actually filling in the necessary details. I think the question about why is particularly interesting for us because, as Lydia mentioned, we've been going for a while. To be precise, nearly 14 years we've been going. We've been a member of Social Enterprise UK. We are BCorp. We're known as a social enterprise. We serve social enterprises. Why on earth would we need yet another accreditation? And actually, there's some really, really good reasons. And of course, Rachel gave you some of those reasons that might apply to you. But these are the reasons for us. First of all, the rigor of the accreditation process is really interesting to us. We learn through going through accreditations, and there are others that we have. So, we have we're an accredited living wage employer. We have accreditation from the Mayor of London's Good Work Scheme. And in each case, what happens is that we raise our game. We understand what they're looking for, what's the best practice. And I actually find it really, it's both reassuring and it's aspirational for us to learn and try and go for what the absolute gold standard is. I'm happy to say that I think we did pretty well in the sense that not only did we get accredited, but the team from Social Enterprise Mark came back and said, oh, you might even be eligible for our gold mark, and do you want another conversation? Which we haven't done yet, but that was very affirming. So yeah, we did have to put a bit of our house in order, but not much. But it was still, that was really helpful. So we always learn through the accreditation process. That was the first thing. The second thing is proof and legitimacy to externals. We had put in place an asset lock. There's been some discussion in the chat about what that is. There are a number of funders. We do a mixture of trading and fundraising as part of our model. And some of the things, and investment raising as well, in the social investment space. And a number of the funders require you to have certain criteria. We have two organizations. One is a company limited by shares, and one is a CIC. Sometimes some funders look sideways at us for our company limited by shares. Are you really a social enterprise? You know, what about your shareholders? Are they just going to take all the money out of the company and run off with it into the sunset? Well, I have to say, shareholders have put large amounts of their own cash in, and in all our years of trading, they've had one very tiny dividend once. So I don't think they're expecting to run off into any sunsets based on that. It's all about the impact, and they're very engaged in the impact. But we can demonstrate that also through now the Social Enterprise Mark. Part of our accreditation process was demonstrating that asset lock, but also our other impact focus, our governance structures, and so on and so forth. So it's easier now for us to say, yeah, you don't need to do long due diligence on us and listen to us pleading that we are really a social enterprise, even though we're a company limited by shares. Look, we've got an external accreditation that you can trust and that is well known in the sector, and you know, that opens doors for us. So that's the second thing. The third thing is the relationships. I actually first spoke to the team at Social Enterprise Mark. We were organising last September. We were organising a hackathon, Build Back Better theme, and we first kind of started having conversations about them supporting that and being a partner, and I immediately was struck by how warm and friendly the team were. They've been consistently helpful through the accreditation process, as part of, you know, reaching out as part of sharing their networks, sharing things that we want to share with them. And yeah, you know, when you just deal with people who just have warmth to them. So we're big believers in the Impact Hub network, in the power of relationship, the power of community, and these guys are exemplary in that. So it's a lovely thing to be part of, and it's very genuine. You know, there's no sense that you're being sold to, or it's just human to human. This is what matters to us, and let's help you make it happen. So it's deeply, deeply appreciated. So those three things really were all very motivating for us. The learning process through the rigor of the accreditation, the legitimacy and proof that it gave us to external stakeholders, and then that relationship and network. The process is actually not so hard. I know when Rachel goes through, you know, there's this stage and this, you know, it can look like it's difficult. It really wasn't. But of course, it's very easy for me to say that because actually I didn't do most of the work. That was Sam. So I'm going to hand over to Sam now. We picked Sam to do it because he's part of our fundraising team. He's a really great copywriter, and he had the joyous task of having me basically do a big brain dump on him. Here it is. This is what we need to say. And he then turned it into something that was clear and beautiful and easy to understand. So credit to him. Over to Sam.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to say really. It was I was sort of just doing the social impact assessment form, and like Debbie said, it was sort of like a big old brain dump of all the sort of impact and all the areas we were trying to cover, and trying to write that down and get it a bit of coherence and a bit of sense out of it all. But I think what's quite a good example of why maybe the mark can seem a bit more daunting than it actually is I did the same thing. I sort of took this form that we needed to fill out and set off writing it as I normally write a proposal or a funding application or something, and firing in loads of detail and all these things, and quickly realized that actually looking at sort of how Social Enterprise Mark wanted it, it doesn't need to be incredibly detailed. It doesn't need to be really elaborate. It was actually sort of just capturing the key elements of where we work and how we work and the most important stuff. So actually it was I would have liked to have realized that a little bit quicker than I did, but yeah, no, it was a good learning process. And actually I think Debbie's right in terms of going through the form, it's about your social impact. It's about what you aim to do, what actions you are doing, where you see the difference, how you're measuring the difference, all these like really important things for social impact, and for social enterprises. And I think for us, we're constantly talking about the different areas. We have the co-working space for social entrepreneurs. We have our programs that help different entrepreneurs from different backgrounds. And it was about really sort of actually getting that all down and putting it systematically in, okay, this is helping in this area, this is helping in this area. And it's very good for sort of sorting out where you see the most impact and where you're doing a lot of work, and also where maybe you need to do a little bit more work as well. I think it's good to sort of really sort of specify where it all is. So overall, in the end, it was a really good process, and the form is nowhere near as hard as you might think it is, and I highly recommend getting it done. And I look forward to the gold mark, which should be more lovely sort of copywriting.
Great, thank you very much, Sam, and Rachel and Davy, of course, for sharing all your insights into this. So I suppose now is a good time to open up for any questions you may have for Rachel, Davy, or Sam. So I'll let you feel free to unmute yourself to ask your question, or otherwise you can also comment in the chat. So this can be about the application process, the nitty-gritty of it, or whether the certification feels right for your organisation.
I just wanted to kick off. Sorry, just to say that thanks to Debbie and Sam for their words about the process, and I think they really summarised it really well. That quite often, when you hear accreditation, it can be quite daunting, because there's a lot of quite strict processes out there, and actually when it does come to completing the form, for instance, it's not. We often hear the same thing. It's nowhere near as bad as they think. I think because we have a lot of instructions as well, but actually doing the work isn't too bad. It's very much of a reflection process, of review of what you're currently doing. And so we hear that many enjoy the process and find it really beneficial to actually review, the social impact work that they're doing. And so they find the actual process very helpful. So I just thought I'd sort of follow on from what Sam said to add to that.
Thank you, Rachel. That's a very good point, actually.
I've got a question, which is what's similar and what's different to being a B Corp, and what value does it add if you are one to add the other?
So we're both. So maybe I can give a perspective on that.
Yeah,
they're really, really different. You can be a B Corp without being a social enterprise. B Corp is about, there are some overlaps, but B Corp is essentially about your internal practices. It covers things like how you treat your workforce. It does have some supply chains, social and environmental effects of your business. But you don't have to be a social enterprise. And what that means is that there's nothing about the asset lock, there's nothing about how you use your surplus. And also one of the things that B Corps do is that sometimes they'll accredit a subsidiary within a larger enterprise. So for example, Ben & Jerry's is accredited, they're part of a huge corporate which is not accredited. Innocent Smoothies, I believe, is accredited as a B Corp, but Unilever, who I think own them now, is it Unilever who own Innocent? Is not. I don't
remember whether it's Coke or Unilever.
It used to be Coke, but I think Coke sold it. Anyway, whoever it is. So it's different. So a lot of the stuff that B Corp do is, again, we've learned some stuff from their processes and some of their recommendations. But it's a different accreditation. B Corp did not give us access to the legitimacy in the social enterprise sector, the social impact funding. It did not give us, the kind of, that kind of identity. It didn't do any of that for us. It does something slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think so we're the only body to actually accredit social enterprises. So B Corp obviously is wider than that. Exactly what Devi said, but also you know, you can have big corporate companies holding B Corp because their profits might go to shareholders, and that's essentially everything that a social enterprise is. And I think the key thing is a social enterprise is all about having those social environmental objectives. That's at the heart of what they're there to do, and that's what makes them a social enterprise. And the money that they make is about, you know, maximizing those objectives. Whereas an organization that might be for, you know, company limited by shares, that can you know, do operate in any way, and they might do some really good CSR on the side, can hold a B Corp accreditation, but it's not the sort of fundamental reason for their being, unlike a social enterprise.
That's really helpful to know, because I guess I've always felt like we are fundamentally there for the social mission, but I've also wanted to be cautious about how we lock up, because I don't yet understand how we're going to need to seek investment, and some investors really don't like asset locks and protections, and some really do like that. And I think until we've felt like we've scoped the investment market, we won't know what would help us the most. I'm hoping it's people who are ethically aligned and therefore aren't after the kind of because we clearly don't want to have an exit plan with maximizing profit. That's definitely not where we're at. And actually, you know, I've chosen for well, for 11 years to run a company that's got a clear social purpose. And since I left the NHS, you know, to actually the company's been registered 16 years, but since I left the NHS to you know, really primarily focus on achieving a goal that's about the mental health of children. But it's about, yeah, I guess what's the right structure to get us to do that. And for me, I'm still feeling out what form of investment. And I guess as I have those conversations, I'll understand whether the kind of investors I want like to have a social enterprise mark, and the what kind I don't like to have it, or whether actually there's some blurriness about that, and some people who are wanting to take an, at least in principle, equity share in order to invest.
You might like, Miriam, so we are also looking for investment. And I think one of the things to bear in mind is it doesn't have to be in 100% asset lock. It's 51%. And that does make quite a big difference, because you can then still offer certain things to certain investors, including equity. But you're right to say it will depend on the investor. If you're primarily going for investment from the social sector, it will help you. If you're primarily going for investment outside, they're less familiar with it, and there are more questions. But I don't think it rules it out. It doesn't rule out equity investment because it is 50%, not 100%. That is the criteria.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really helpful to know. Thank you. And I think there was a related question in the chat about how does Social Enterprise Mark add to a CIC?
Yeah, I spotted that. That's a good question. So CIC is quite a good model for a social enterprise. By default, they're set up to have the interest of the community at heart, and they meet a lot of the criteria. But the key difference is not all CICs are actually social enterprises. Obviously, a key part of being a social enterprise is that enterprise element, that you're trading, you're providing a service, selling a product. To be sustainable in the long term, and so some CICs can be reliant on grants and donations. So it's about us proving them as a social enterprise and demonstrating that they are trade dependent, not dependent on grants or donations as their form of income.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Miriam. Great question, and Rachel. Yeah, there's been a few questions in the chat that have been answered, but I don't know if anyone else has any other questions that they would like to raise. And I should just add, Sophie has included a link in the comments about the differences between social enterprise accreditation and being a B Corp. So you might find that helpful as well.
Mark has a question.
Hi there. Yeah, just to follow up on this, there's a sort of spectrum between, like say, a charity on one hand and a full-blown business on the other. And there's quite a spectrum in between. And social enterprise covers a lot of that. And it isn't just asset lock, it's also how you redistribute profits. And then what does that mean for how you want to finance yourself? If you're more towards the charity end, you could go for grants like a CIC. But if you're more towards the limited by shares side with articles of association to embed a social mission, you could still mix the two to some degree and reach out to, say, social investment. I'm looking at limited by shares, but having embedded social mission and asset lock, but also trying to figure out how much of profit redistribution to allow for the right mix. And I was wondering how, in terms of the mark, how it fits in, if it covers most of that spectrum. Let's say it was 51% of profits shall be reinvested. Is that sufficient for support from the mark in order to be able to aim at social investment? You know, is that a familiar scenario? I was just trying to find out because I'm not quite sure yet where to place myself on the spectrum.
Yeah, so it's a minimum of 51% profit distribution, and that's naturally so that, you know, to show you're a committed social enterprise, that you're committing those profits to achieving those objectives, but that allows room for, you know, financial opportunities elsewhere. We've got a variety. Some sit at the 51%. That allows flexibility if you're, you know, a shareholder or company limited by guarantee. But we have those that are 100% distribute profits to their social mission. And like I say, that can be reinvested back into your own social enterprise, or, you know, for instance, charities distributing to other similar aims, other social enterprises, other charities.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to understand that because I appreciate that, you know, it's not a social enterprise is not a charity. It's not, you know, a social enterprise is using a business model to trade as a way of achieving social change. So there is a mix of the two. There is social impact, but there is also the fact that you're a business at the end of the day. So you do have to prove both, which can be a bit onerous. But yeah, I was just trying to understand where the sweet spot might be, let's say, you know, to kind of be sustainable as a business, not overly reliant on grants, but still be construed as a social enterprise. And it seems like the 51% and over helps as a benchmark as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Thanks.
In the middle, and yeah, it's obviously our standards are there to help identify those social enterprises that sit in that space between the two. I think.
Thanks.
And I was just going to add, I mean, obviously we support a lot of social enterprises to start up or grow. A lot of how you work that is more dependent on the workability of your business model as it is on anything else, and that's something you'll have a lot of choices about, as well as the market will influence, of course. But you know, there are not many areas in which social enterprises can't find a business model that can work. with that balance of trading. It's not impossible to do. There are literally thousands of social enterprises doing it.
One of the things that I've had a lot of discussion about is how a social enterprise can actually effectively pay a founder a perfectly reasonable market salary and can reinvest in their own delivery of services and their own evaluations in such a way that you actually have a lot of flexibility in how you do your accounts. So for me, I've never taken more than what I would have earned in the NHS out of my company in any one year, but I've normally done it by taking minimum wage for much less hours than I do, and then if there's capacity, taking a dividend. But actually, probably the difference if we registered as a social enterprise would be making myself take a salary and marking the way that we've used a lot of the profitability of the income generating side of the company to fund the research side of the company and the clinical delivery side of the company, rather than it actually being anywhere near limiting the threshold for what I would want to earn, because I'm never going to want to earn at a scale that's going to be a market reasonable salary plus more than 49% of the company's profits. I mean, that just would be, I guess all I was saying was that I thought it was interesting that there's a lot of scope in that balance between salary and dividend, and in how you account for what you're delivering, that lets you be more flexible than I expected.
It may also depend on the nature of your business. I'm intending to do a tech startup, so it's going to cost quite a bit of money to get the right talent to scale technology. So there's no way to survive off of grants. I was thinking of grants as a starting point, but then with a view to shifting towards investment in order to be able to scale, and because technology involves costs, you need to get talent for it as well. And that's another story in itself too, what people want to be paid for versus what they could get outside of this. So
again, Mark, just to reassure you, we are literally trying to raise millions of pounds, and we are accredited. So it's doable, and multiple other people have done it too.
Yeah. So I mean, it's fair enough, and it's why social investment, in order to get that size of money, is absolutely essential for a tech startup, in the same way for what you're doing, because of the to be able to scale as a business. Yeah, fair enough.
Just for reference, Mark, we are a tech company. We just are in the children's social care and mental health space. So we actually only build digital tools.
Right. Yeah. So, no, it's good to know.
Yeah, and actually, if it would be helpful, we can have a conversation, because we got a big Innovate grant to help us scale, and other doors are opening. So there are things that can help with that, but none of anything that we've done so far would have been inhibited by the social enterprise mark or commitment to the profit share or asset lock or whatever.
Yeah, I think our model, what we're developing, is around neurodiversity and autism. So it's about both people who are autistic or neurodiverse having an opportunity to design products, and then that the products will benefit them as well. So it's about inclusive product design. It just happens to be in the area of neurodiversity and autism, because that's the area I work in. So there are some relations there. Yeah.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. I'm just conscious of time, and that we're reaching the end now of our webinar. So I'd encourage you to connect outside for this conversation. Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today, and to Rachel, Baby, and Sam for sharing their insights and for your questions. I just wanted to highlight that when, as a member of Impact of King's Cross, you actually get 20% off Social Enterprise Mark accreditation. So if that's something that you are interested in, that might help, I've just included the link to our website. But otherwise, I'll wrap it up here then, and just say thank you again to Social Enterprise Mark for joining us, and to Davy and Sam, and for everyone who's come along, and I hope you found it helpful. And do feel free to reach out if you've got any follow-up questions, and hopefully you feel a bit more confident ahead of starting your application.